Yeah, Risey, let's have a chat about how we can actually take your surfing to the next level. First off, things are looking pretty good. It was funny when I first watched this clip here, I was like, oh wow, he's dropped in on this guy pretty hardcore from the beach angle. But then I realized obviously you were going for the shot. So there's one little moment here that I wanted to highlight, and it's right here. Okay, so this is a very sort of stock standard situation where I see a surfer getting too tall during what should be a sort of bottom turn or the bottom half of the speed flow movement. So at this point, notice how your board is still pointing out here towards the beach even further, and yet you've already extended and you're quite tall. So we see a lot of that kinetic potential actually being thrown off back here towards the beach instead of lifting you and carrying you up the wave into the power zone to do either a maneuver or to continue down the line as you're doing your speed flow. So overall, we see here that the ease into compression is happening a little bit too fast. So there's not a big enough build-up of kinetic potential as you sink down into a low position in order to explode. So you're going through that process a bit quick, which makes it not as efficient and not as powerful when you come out of it. So ideally, we actually want this part of the surfboard to be pointing a little bit more up here towards the section before we release into the jump that'll get us up the wave. The next thing we're going to look at is this arm position here, particularly the back arm, okay, and how we can actually fix that, because you're at a stage where you should be starting to look at doing maneuvers, and this arm position here is going to be holding you back a little bit. So we're going to explore that throughout this analysis. We'll start off with the speed flow, and then we'll take a good close look at how we can actually introduce the maneuvers. So this is the other angle on that. So I'll just point out, I'll try and find the same movement. Your arms go high. I think that might have been the movement there. Okay, so we sort of see this very quick jump there. See how there's not a lot of load into the legs there. There's not a lot of strong compression. It's kind of just like a swivel instead of a compression and a jump. And now the arm situation, see this back arm here cross the body? Yeah, already crossing the body. So this is a sort of classic mistake that I deal with when it comes to this stage of surfing that you're at, that sort of late beginner stage, starting to transition into intermediate, and that's something we want to fix. So let's have a look at how that all looks. So this is the clip I want to use as a side-by-side. What I'm looking for is this longer time spent in this strong position here. And see how I don't really release that jump until the board is kind of facing up here towards the top of the wave, because that's where I want my energy to go, right? I want to conserve all of this potential in the legs here in the lower body and not throw it off back here towards the beach, but actually throw it up here towards the top of the wave, and that's where that jump comes from. So see how that jump occurs about there? So see the board is already pointing up here. So that's number one. Second thing is look at that back arm. That's a neutral position. So that's a new word we're going to have a look at. And again, see that long time spent in that low position to really build up that pent up energy. And then once that board is starting to face more towards here, the jump occurs to really get me up to the top of the wave. See, especially from this point, see that jump all the way to get up here? That's what we're looking for. We're talking micro details now because these have a big impact on the end result in your surfing. Right now, especially with that back arm situation, you're capping your surfing, right? There's a little bit of there's a ceiling and you've reached it. And now what we're going to do, we're going to switch up the technique a little bit to learn how we can break through past it. So I want you to pay particular attention to this back arm here. See, it's in the neutral position. The shoulders are in the neutral position, and that's so I can utilize them within the maneuver instead of cashing in that rotation on the way up the wave. What you're doing is you're bringing this arm across the body and then you've got nowhere to rotate within your maneuver, making it very difficult to coordinate that movement. Okay, so let's sort of do a little side by side on them and see how that looks. I've tried to time this, there are different waves of course, but I've tried to time this so that it's appropriate. Okay, so see your back arm here, it's already getting prepared for this swing across the body. You've already sort of counter-rotated this way, up this way, so that you can then rotate back around this way, which we don't want. We actually want you to be a little bit more conservative with the arms. I want you to focus more on leaning into, compressing and bending into the knees here, not so much hinging at the hips, but definitely really compressing into the knees rather than loading up this rotation, which is what you're currently doing. So I want you to focus on that, really getting nice and low. I'm going to give you a good surf skate exercise to practice with that. And then we want to really release. See how at that point there, on your side, see how there's not so much of a jump, it's actually more of a pivot. There's not so much a, see the knees don't really change position that much. Okay, now as if you watch the right hand side of screen, watch the knees change position during that jumping process. It's a really strong jump. Okay, so you sort of saw that go from there to there. See how I'm pressing all of that energy into the board to rebound myself up to the top of the wave. I'm literally jumping from here to here. That's my goal. What you're doing here is you're almost doing like a backside turn almost. You're kind of pivoting and swiveling your way up the wave. Right now it's effective, but as soon as we start looking at maneuvers, it's going to really start holding you back. So we're going to practice that. Now what I had to do, and see that, okay, we'll just play with that again. See this arm has now crossed the body in a big way when we want it to actually be back here behind you, because when we start looking at maneuvers, we want to be able to rotate into them. Whereas here, your shoulders have already rotated. You've only got this much further to go. So you're never going to get that strong maneuver. Now what's interesting, I actually had to pause you here, even though we're sort of moving at the same pace, to allow this to catch up. So what's happening is you're applying a lot of movement, but it's not as efficient as it could be. So what I want to do is try and find a little bit more efficiency in your movement, and that's what we're talking about here with this longer time spent in compression. See how low I'm getting there? Like really quite low. I'm almost touching the wave. And this position's not too bad, but you don't hold it long enough. So you sort of start to exit out of it really quickly and very early in the process. See how you're going tall already, and your board was essentially facing down here during that time? Whereas I'm holding on to that low position, then I'm releasing it to get up here. And I'm just able to project a lot more down the line with that movement. So again, see that back arm coming across the body there? Right there. There was no reason for that movement. It's not a functional movement. It's just a little pattern that you've found that's now holding you back a little bit. So again, just a summary here. We're looking for you to spend a longer time in compression, and we're looking for you to be more conscious with the arms, thinking about jumping and shrugging up the wave, jumping and shrugging as opposed to rotating up the wave. Okay, so we see if we go to this next wave here, we can see that occurring. You're generating a lot of speed. Your timing is pretty good. Like you're staying ahead of this section really nicely, but there's just not a lot of direction. Right now, the wave's controlling you. Okay, you're just kind of holding on, right? See that arm just come across the body there? If I go back a frame right there, see it coming across the body? That's what we don't want to happen in that situation. We actually want that to be back here. Okay, so this is how we're going to work on it. We're going to line up the surf skate. We're going to set up our little slalom, and we're going to focus on that jumping and shrugging movement. Okay, so there's a couple of cues to look out for here. When you approach the cone, you're going to take your back arm, which is your left arm, and you're going to imagine that you're actually grabbing onto that cone, almost as if it's like a rock climbing sort of grip. You're going to grab onto it with this back arm, and you're going to pull yourself through. Okay, now what that looks like is that movement right here. See that pull? So again, grab and pull. Now what that does, it makes you hold onto your shoulder rotation, and it makes you hold onto your compression because you need to get low. And then when you actually grab onto it and you start pulling yourself through, you'll achieve this strong rotation of the shoulders at the right time. And it'll be the right shoulder pushing up the wave here as the back shoulder rotates that way. Now what's key is we now find that this neutral position with the arms. Okay, even though we're not going into a maneuver here, we still find the nice neutral position with the arms, because when we get to the top of the wave, we actually want to start rotating back down it to find a little bit of bounce, right? So we're rotating up, rotating down, rotating up, rotating down. And that's how we can develop a nice speed flow. Here, in the same position on the wave, your arm is already crossed. So this back arm has already crossed the body, and there's now nowhere for you to rotate. There's no bounce that you can find outside of just with the heels, which sometimes is enough. But in a maneuver, no chance. So this is what we're going to practice on the surf skates. We're going to line them up like this, and we're going to really focus on that pluck action, that pluck and pull action, and we're going to just surf skate our way through. So see that now the shoulders rotate. As I'm approaching the top of the wave here, I'm obviously wanting to turn back down. That's when the shoulders rotate back across to guide me. So the principle here, you could just think about look and point where you want to go. Here, you're pointing down here, which is actually not too bad. Your back arm is saying, I want to go back here behind me, which obviously is going to restrict your speed. It's going to blunt your speed and momentum. Okay, we'll continue with this. So copy this movement if you can. I've put this in slow-mo. I've done a couple of different angles so you can even set up your phone and just sort of compare. See that back arm really pulling through? I mean, it's almost like you're starting a lawnmower, right? From there, I'm grabbing and pulling and shrugging and jumping. See this shrugging and jumping action from here? Jump and shrug. Nice neutral position with the arms that I can then put into a maneuver. And we're now going to talk about how to do a maneuver, because you're definitely there, and I can tell you're sort of starting to think about it, which is fantastic. So let's now have a look at how we can actually apply it. Oh, cool. So that's the setup of the cones. I'll just let that play out. Cool. Okay, so this wave here was a really nice looking wave. Epic session. Only two of you guys out there. Looks sick. So this was a really good opportunity for you to be able to actually do a cutback. And in the end, you do try, but you probably try at a point of the wave where you're too far away from the white water to actually find a good rebound. But this little first mistake, and again, this happens to everybody, right? Not just beginner surfers, intermediate surfers, even advanced surfers, is a misread of the section. You sort of thought you had to speed flow down the line here, when the real money section was actually back here. You could have just taken off and gone straight into a strong bottom turn here and gone straight up into a maneuver. So anyway, I won't harp too much on about that, because that's, you know, that's a choice, that's hard to teach. What I want to focus on is the technique. So when you eventually go for your cutback there, there's a few things missing. So I want to look at and compare this wave here, a little bit different, a little bit steeper this wave. But I think the start of your wave looked quite similar, to be honest, and you could have found a similar section here. But we'll use them, and we'll compare, and we'll take a look at what's happening. Okay, so first thing, notice in this point, we're actually kind of looking pretty similar. So we're looking pretty good. But what I've done over here is I've created a lot of space for this bottom turn to occur. So notice if I play that out again, notice how I actually differentiated. If I was wanting to generate speed, I could just introduce this bottom turn here and then just stay in this top half of the wave. But because I need to approach this, I need to approach maneuvers more vertically, I've come down to the bottom of the wave here, not too far away that I lose speed, but I've left myself enough space and time to be able to approach the lip more vertically. So that's the first step in changing this around. You weren't able to kind of, especially because you were out of the power zone, you probably didn't have as much speed as I did. You weren't able to create that space and approach this section more vertically. Again, it might have been a little bit difficult because you were so far out on the shoulder. There wasn't as much lip to rebound off. So you would naturally have to go a little bit more horizontal. But that's the first step, is identifying that section and creating enough space for the bottom turn to occur. Now, the bottom turn is essentially the same thing as what we've been chatting about with the speed flow. So it's essentially just an even longer time spent in compression in order for your board to travel through this rotation. And notice how if I was speed flowing, I probably would have been in the jump already by then, but I've held onto it and then I've released it so that I can come more vertical to the section. Now again, really, really key, neutral position with the arms. Why? And we'll continue to watch the right of screen here, the rotation. See how this arm starts to open up during the maneuver? This arm is punching through, pushing through and back this way. Opening up, and really importantly, watch the head turn there. Okay, so I'm looking and I'm pointing where I want to go. Looking, pointing where I want to go. If I had more time, I could have looked back all the way to here and actually pulled it all the way back. But because I want to go and do another turn, I cut it a little bit short and finish it here. Now, if we look at the sort of suboptimal technique here, we're looking at the arms. See, your right arm is very high here. No real reason for that. Also quite tall because you haven't held on to that bottom turn long enough, which we've already spoken about. It's this point that is where we're struggling. Why? Look at that back arm has already crossed the body. So you've now got no momentum and impetus to really go through this rotation with the upper body, which is where the whole rotation starts. So you naturally, instinctively go, I need to get back to the power source here. And I'm just going to try and turn back there with my heels. And what happens is you've got no rotation with the arms driving any actual turning with the body. And so you just kind of lean into the heels and you just ended up, there's nowhere to go. There's no drive, there's no rail engagement. And that's just because of this back arm. Isn't it funny how one tiny little part of the movement can hold back the entire maneuver? So again, looking at that there, what happens? Your eyes are still looking down here, so they haven't turned either. They haven't told the body that you want to turn, and then you just kind of bog that rail because there's no real direction. Okay, so again, in summary, we want to create a bit more space. Ideally on this wave, I would have had you doing this maneuver back here right at the start, but still we want to create a little bit more space when we're going for a maneuver. So we want to come down a little bit lower, not to the point of losing speed though. So we want to stay in that nice curve of the wave, and we want to give ourselves enough time. We want a strong, even more delayed jump up to the top of the wave. Importantly, we're going to find that neutral position with the arms instead of that back arm coming in front of the body. And then we want to look and point and rotate, look, point or rotate back down here towards the whitewater. Look and point where you want to go. So what that means is we're going to open up and sort of pull back behind us with this arm, with the leading arm. We're going to push in front of us with this trailing arm, and we're going to also turn our head back towards the whitewater. And that's going to look like that. Okay, so that's what we want to look for. So to practice that again on the surf skates is a fantastic option. So we're going to apply a couple of speed flow movements so that you learn how to redirect and negotiate an actual maneuver compared to a bottom turn. So we're going to come in nice. I might even just slow everything down for you. So we're going to go speed flow, then we create more space, so we come lower on the wave, we hold our low point a bit longer, then we release it up into the section, and that's when we do our rotation. So the great thing about the surf skates is you can practice this over and over again without having to worry about catching the wave. So there's that movement, release, and the opening of the body. So again, really good idea would be to film this if you can and compare it to the technique I'm applying now and see where you can copy it, fix up any little mistakes like that. Look and point where you want to go. So in summary, mate, longer and more powerful compressions. So I want to see more build up into your compression. Number 2, a strong jump out of that compression into a neutral position with the arms. Really, really key. Number 3, start exploring a more vertical approach. Okay, so I want to see you start to apply maneuvers. So now that once you sort of get that speed flow and you're feeling really confident with it, or you're on a wave where you know you've got the time, I want to see you, rather than surfing just a horizontal trajectory, I want to start to see you actually looking for maneuvers. Okay, and that's where we start to look at an even longer, more built up compression, a big strong release into that neutral position, and then we're going to see that shoulder and head rotation. So in little moments like this, rather than surfing away from the pocket, I want to see you start to go low, cut back, low, cut back, low, cut back, okay? And really start to surf in the pocket a little bit more. Anyway, mate, thanks for sending all your footage through. I hope this one helped. And I hope you're getting lots of waves and had a good New Year. And Chrissy, chat soon, brother. Cheers.